to episode 7. Whew. This one's a doozy. There isn't a lot that I really enjoyed, and the continuation of the episode, I still feel like it could have been so much better if they just followed what was already written, as there's nothing in this episode that is based in any lore at this point. None of these events happened the way they did. None of it. And it's just so disappointing. And there's some big... there's a big issue that comes up that we'll get into, and then there's still the whole fight that I also felt just wasn't good and believable. I don't know. So let's just start this breakdown here. It starts with Celebrimbor essentially still trapped in his mind with making the rings. He thinks he still is seeing things and noticing things of like, wait, what's going on? Right? He looks in the mirror and sees like basically destruction behind him. He looks at his hammer, and a gemstone is missing. He notices a mouse. So he's just noticing weird things. And this is all kind of cool stuff. I like how he's piecing it all together and figuring out that he's in kind of like a time loop, because later on we see that he marks a candle and the wax doesn't burn, the coals in the fire never burn out kind of thing. And then the mouse makes a reappearance, so it's just a time loop like the Matrix, essentially. So I like all that stuff. It's just, again, this would have been so much better if he's figured this out, and now he has a plan on how to outsmart Sauron. It's like, okay, something's not right. Anatar is really not who he says he is. I'm going to make these rings that he wants me to, but I'm not going to tell him what I'm doing. Or have him involved in the process. I'm just going to play along, but I'm going to make these rings in secret my way. And they should have been the elven rings. And then he makes the elven rings. Sauron isn't able to corrupt them, and this pisses him off, and it starts the whole fight or whatever. Like, I don't know. I wish these were the elven rings and not these 9 rings of men. And then later we see that Galadriel takes the rings after, and that just causes, there's so many other problems, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So then we have Anatar going out and further influencing the people, telling them that Celebrimbor has gone mad now. He's lost all sense. We have orcs outside that are attacking, so we'll fight back. So he's trying to further build distrust between Celebrimbor and his people, essentially. Then we have the start of the catapults. And this is essentially my first issue with how this fight goes. So I like the whole concept of using the catapults to kind of weaken the defenses, weaken the armies, cause panic in the civilians. That all makes sense. And then they want to use the river to cross, but they obviously can't cross because of the water. So I get that part. That makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is the fact that they fire, like 5 trebuchets or catapults at this mountain, and it brings down the entire mountain because there was like one tiny little rock that was standing or like holding up a bigger pillar or section of the mountain. So then when they knock out that tiny rock, then the whole mountain collapses. Like, that's not realistic. Because then that would imply that Okay, well, if this tiny rock that's holding up this bigger rock, if that just fell and slipped and gave weight under gravity and erosion over time, because that's what happens to mountains, then the entire mountain would collapse on its own anyways. Like, if you fired 5 catapults at a mountain, you're not bringing it all down. You're bringing it all down if this tiny little rock's holding it, but then the whole mountain's just going to collapse on its own anyways. So, I don't know. That's just... I didn't find that really believable or realistic. And then on top of that, so yes, the mountain blocks the river, fine. It stops the water flow, fine. But then the water or the river basically essentially dries up in minutes, enough so that orcs can traverse it with no issue, and they can then lay down tracks later and push like the siege weapon through the mud with no issues. Yet when Elrond arrives later, horses are drowning in water. That's weird. The rest of the dwarves, when we're back in Moria, the rest of the dwarves decide to side with Prince Durin, as they also see the king as being unreasonable. So they get ready to like basically start a rebellion. Elrond shows up to Moria and asks Durin for help. Durin essentially agrees. So the river is now dried up. The orcs make their push across the river. The elves are fighting back a little bit. And now this is important to me anyways, is we see elves constantly shoot arrows. I get it. But there's something missing from this siege. And that's the fact that there's no arrow buckets. All the arrows that they have come from their quivers. And I know people are going to be like, oh, well, Legolas had infinite arrows or whatever. Or what about Helm's Deep? What about Minas Tirith? And what I don't think what a lot of people remember is, one, Legolas ran out of arrows in Amon Hen in the Fellowship of the Ring, right? The same fight sequence where Boromir dies. Legolas has no arrows in his quiver at the end of that sequence. Then in Helm's Deep and in Minas Tirith, there's arrow buckets along the walls. They're noticeable. You can see them in the shots. So later when there's elves just pulling arrows out of thin air as if they're pulling them out of buckets, but there's no actual buckets there, it's just weird. And then it loses the reality of the situation. So it just, again, it loses the quality. And on top of that, Amazon tried to really sell this season as, we have a fight scene that, or a battle that's 2 episodes long, and we want it to rival the Battle of the Bastards from Game of Thrones. But nothing in this fight conveys to me that this is a more well thought out, a more exciting, and a more eventful fight than anything in Game of Thrones, let alone Battle of the Bastards, which they keep trying to reference and saying this is better. So I don't know. I don't see it. And then we go back to Celebrimbor, and he now reveals that he's piecing it together, that this is all fake. This pisses off Sauron. Celebrimbor then is now back in reality. He finds out that Anantar is actually Sauron, that he's using the blood of Sauron to forge the Rings of Men, and he flees. He tries to find Mardania and tell her the truth. She doesn't believe him because Sauron's influenced her and the guards. They get in a little bit of a disagreement, and Celebrimbor grabs her, or she grabs Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor says, "No, get off me." And then at this point, Sauron now has some nice, cool Dark Lord of the Sith force powers, and force pushes her off the walls, and she dies. At this point, Elrond arrives, and then this is another weird pacing. Not even just weird in terms of events that happen, but weird pacing. Elrond arrives. He shouts, I think his line is like, die or charge, or kill our foes or something like that. And they start charging. And then they stop mid-charge as they get closer to the orcs. And then they start a second charge after that. And then once the orcs reveal that Galadriel's in a cage, then they stop a second time. And it's weird pacing. Not to mention that I don't think you could stop a whole army of horses like that 5 feet from the orc army without the momentum of that the speed of the horses were going would carry them forward into the army. Like, they literally stopped like 5 feet away, as if horses can just stop on a dime, which they can't. So I don't know. That was weird. But so now they want to try to work. Adar's plan now is give me the ring. I will release Galadriel. You guys can go home. I will fight Sauron because of the ring, because of one of the elven rings you're giving me. Which, whatever. At this point, I've kind of given up on Adar's story because I know he's not going to make it past the next episode, or he shouldn't make it past the next episode. None of this has ever happened in the books. This entire meeting and discussion that they're having just never existed, so I've stopped caring about it. It doesn't matter what the plan is anymore. And then we get to the part that really, really made me mad. Is the kiss between Elrond and Galadriel. Now, if you've never read the books, then you wouldn't know this piece of information, which I get it. That's okay. You don't need to know, but it doesn't change the fact of how important what this ruins in terms of the lore. Especially because in season 1, Galadriel references her husband, Celeborn. She believes he's dead. He shouldn't be dead. And now, so let's get into this. In the lore, in the world that Tolkien created, Galadriel marries an elf named Celeborn. They go and establish Lothlorien, which should be built at this point, but that's fine. They then have a child, Celebrain. Don't know the exact pronunciation, but we'll say Celebrain. Celebrain then marries Elrond, who then those two establish Rivendell. Elrond and Celebrain have 3 children, Elladan and Elrohir, who we never saw in the movies, that's fine, and they have Arwen. Arwen then goes and marries Aragorn, of course, and thus the kingdom of men is restored. So, if you remove Celeborn, you thus remove Celebrain, which then thus removes Arwen, which then Aragorn has no one to marry. This is in the lore. This is in the books that Amazon has the rights to. It exists there. There is absolutely no reason not to have them in the show. Absolutely no reason. But for whatever reason, Amazon has decided to hide Celeborn and hide the fact that Galadriel has a daughter. And it blows my mind. This fanfic is insane. I know it's just getting worse. It just gets worse. Now, I know there's people out there that are saying, oh, well, Elrond kissed Galadriel in this sequence so that he could give her the lockpick so that she could break out of her handcuffs, which is really stupid because we saw in the previous episode that the handcuffs are basically like a magnet and you just push them together or pull them apart. There's no actual keyhole in them, but whatever. So people are saying, oh, he kissed Galadriel so that he could give her the lockpick. Well, Fun fact, there's more than one way to give someone a lockpick secretly that doesn't involve kissing. And they've done it in films and television for years. For years. You could walk by sneakily and drop it in their pocket. You could embrace them in a hug because they're your friend. You could whisper something in their ear while you drop it in their pocket. You could go for a handshake or grab her arm and drop it in or something like that, or put it in her hand. There's so many ways to do it. But no, Amazon made the choice to make an effort to have them kiss, which just breaks so much lore. Why does Lord of the Rings need to be Game of Thrones, right? Doesn't need to be Game of Thrones at all. They're their own things for a reason. So it's just... it really bothers me. And to that extent, I saw an interview yesterday of the actor who plays Elrond talk about how shocked he was when he read that in the script, and how him and the actress who plays Galadriel had to come together and like figure out how to make this work, because both of them weren't even caught off guard. They didn't know that this is going to be in the script. They weren't told about it. They weren't told that everything has been leading up to this point. And as far as they claim, they're like, well, we know that we know the story, so this is really weird to us too. So the actors didn't even know that their entire character relationship was leading up to this point. So is Amazon making it up as they go? I don't know. Maybe. Because it's just the fact that the actors were caught off guard and then they had to come up with a way to make it work after talking with the writers and directors and everyone. That, to me, alone is an issue. Then throw in all the weird lore-breaking stuff, and the fact that this just came out of nowhere, and it makes no sense, and the fact that she references her husband, and now has just decided, now there's no trace of him whatsoever in season 2. Throw all that in together, this scene alone ruins the entire show for me. I will watch the next episode because it's the last episode, and we'll end our suffering there. But I don't know if I can even watch a season 3 at this point, because this just bothers me so much. This smells like The Last Jedi, right? Just like making it up as you go and force sequences in because we think it'll work in the moment. Like, and we're not even halfway through the episode and this happens, and it's just, what is going on? And then on top of that, now, okay, so then they just kiss. Now Elrond is like, okay, I'm gonna fight you, Adar, on the battlefield. So then Adar lets him go, and all the orcs follow him out of camp. And I get that they're trying to show like this honor thing, but orcs don't care about honor. Why aren't they ambushing him as he leaves? He's walking away on a horse. Ambush him, kill him. Orcs don't care about honor. There isn't, well, we'll meet on the battlefield and fight. Like, no! You should be fighting your way out of this camp because you didn't agree to Adar's terms. Like, you don't agree to my terms? Fine, we're gonna kill you here. And then he should be fighting his way out so that he can get back to his army. Or his army should arrive and try to save him. There's no honor in letting him leave and then they fight later. I'm not mad anymore. I'm just disappointed. This fanfic writers are just bad. Even AO3 has better fics for free. It's just, I don't know. It's weird. And then, oh, right. So now Durin, because he's agreed to help Elrond, is now rallying the army, or even, I guess in this case, the people, to fight orcs. And I don't necessarily know what they were trying to go for here, because not all dwarfs are warriors. Just like how not all Gondor civilians are warriors. Not everyone is a warrior. So not all dwarfs are warriors. But he's not even talking to an army in this speech, which was a great speech. Like, the actor really did it well. And I felt motivated. But he's talking to, like, the merchants. And just, your everyday Joe Blow that sits on, that's your neighbor. Like, he's not talking to the army, he's talking to the people. So now I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, is the whole is all of Moria now leaving to go to war, and every single person is willing to fight orcs, and they're going to go out there in their merchant clothes? Are they trying to make it like a Rohan thing where every man that can bear a sword will join the army, but in this case, because we're all about being inclusive and everything, it'll just be everyone in general, the women, the children, all dwarves in general are gonna go to fight. But like Disa is sitting there with an axe in her princess robe. Like, that's not what you do when you go to war. I don't understand. Would you ever do a dramatic reading of a fanfic? Not this fanfic. Maybe some fanfic, but definitely not this one. But every dwarf knows how to fight, right? Like, they're acting like every dwarf, when they're born, has been trained as a warrior and knows what to do, which is just unrealistic, because that's not how the dwarves work, and two, that's not how militaries in general work. If you're going to war, you want everyone to be cohesive. You want everyone to understand the risks. You want everyone to trust each other. They're not defending their home from an invasion. They're going out of their home to fight the orcs. So you're going to want more military minds behind that. I don't know. It's just weird that he's talking to all of Moria. And it felt weird to me. But then we have the actual fight. Dwarves are born with the knowledge of dig, not war. Gosh, they don't even know the basic lore, right? Every dwarf knows how to dig. Sure, they all know how to use an axe, but no, just because you know how to dig doesn't mean you know how to fight. Like, we've seen, right? Because the Amazon's perceived target audience is the ones who have seen the movies, and that's it. They don't care if you've read the books, because that's pretty evident. They don't care about the lore, so they want you to see the movies. We've seen dwarves fight. They fight in unison, right? They looked in the Hobbit films. They reminded me of like the Roman Empire with their shield walls and the firing of those fancy ballistas to break arrows. Like, they fight in unison. So when I see Durin give this speech to these random merchants and neighbors of Moria, I don't see fighting in unison and using crazy war techniques. It's just weird to me. So yeah, elves are fighting the orcs now. Some of it looks cool, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't feel right. And I think it's because of how forced it is, because this isn't how even the battle itself played out in the lore. Elrond didn't show up with his army at the beginning of the fight. He showed up at the end, when the entire city was destroyed and there was people fleeing from Sauron and his orcs. Elrond showed up too late. And then he had to do everything he could to get the civilians out. And so he fought on the northern borders of the city, trying to push back in, trying to save people. So him just showing up and like defending the walls and everything, I don't know. It just felt It felt okay, but it just there wasn't there was it felt like there was less stakes in it weirdly. I don't know, maybe that was just how I felt, but because he's not because the city isn't being destroyed, the stakes, I guess, maybe there's not less stakes, but they're just different stakes. Where he's still where like at this point not all hope is lost. It's just a matter of, okay, well, we'll sit here and defend the city because the dwarves are going to show up later, so it'll be fine. Like, that's kind of his attitude that he has, and we know that that's not how it goes later. But I think that's why that it takes away from this fight. Also, I think something to point out, too, is the fact that these elves that are in this city, or the warriors that are in this city, are the kind of the most, maybe not the most elite elven units, but the most armored and skilled out of all the elves. They're like a myth or a legend of elves. They live in the elven smith region, where all the greatest armor, tools, and weapons are made. And their armor looks like it's half rusted and falling off. And two, I don't see any of that like elite tools, elite armor, elite weapons, elite tactics that they have. Because this is just, it's a group of elves that have always lived in Eregion and have always had the best tools to make the best gear. And it just doesn't look it, and they don't show it in their fighting style. I would imagine that arrows would be like bouncing off of them because they've just made the best armor. And they're all just falling over. It's just, I don't know. Every time I want to see elves fight, I think of the elves in Helm's Deep, where they arrive in their nice, like, brightly colored armor that is reflecting light, and they just look glowing as they represent light. They're more elegant, right? And this is just the opposite of that. It's less elegant. There's less finesse. They look grungy and dirty, rusted looking armor. Like I said, it just doesn't feel right when these are supposed to be like the elitist of all elves almost, because they're in the city of smiths. So it's just that's just weird to me. Then we have this part of the orc strategy really bothers me. I like the concept. There's a concept of a plan, but no actual plan. When it came to writing this story. They don't feel like they have thousands. Yes, there's not thousands of years of training or practice in their fighting style at all. They're sitting there blindly firing one at a time. Yes, there's not a lot of elves fighting, but there should be more they should be more unison because there's less of them. You can't just do what you want when you're outnumbered by that much. You got to work together even more than you normally would. So it doesn't show thousands of years of practice. So yeah, let's talk about this orc strategy here. So the orc strategy is shut down the river. Okay, fine. Walk through the riverbed. Fine. Lay down tracks to move our siege weaponry. Okay, fine. But then it's, let's go to a wall, which is apparently the weakest point in the wall, according to Celebrimbor. Don't know how the audience is supposed to know that, or why we would know that, or why the orcs would know that. But, because there was quite a bit of evidence on why the Uruks chose that specific spot in Helm's Deep to blow up, because Grima Wormtongue has that little monologue about it. But somehow we're just all supposed to know, including the orcs, that this specific section of the wall is super weak. Why? Because they learned it in Helm's Deep. So they go to this point in the wall and they decide to rip it. They use I don't know if it's a ballista that points backwards where they pull it and then it rips chunks out of the wall, which I like the concept of it. I thought that was kind of cool. But I have two different solutions to this, because this seemed like to take a long ass time. This took like the whole fight. They spent the entire day doing this. So I'm like, so that's obviously this takes too long. So one, do it on the gates. Why do you have to walk up to the wall? Push this over to the gate, hammer it into the wooden gate, or maybe it's a little bit more metal, I don't know. But hammer it into the gate and pull off the gate. That makes more sense. Or you know what else you could use? Use your troll. They had this whole big thing about bringing this troll from the Iron Hills, the Drake Killer or whatever, and they don't even use him for the first part. And when they do use him, he just dies instantly anyways. But we see that at least he can take a whole bunch of arrows. Send the troll right up to the gate, bash down the gate, walk on through. Easy. That's going to take way less time and effort than having all of these orcs die as they try to push this weird siege weapon up to a wall and pull it down. It's just, I don't know. I did not like their strategy. So he's discount Boromir. No, there's an elf that's discount Boromir. She's discount Boromir, but we'll get to that later. I guess oh, right. So now we learn it's not just every orc that cares about their families. Because clearly we see these orcs love war, as they should. These orcs are having a blast. They're cheering, they're chanting, banging on drums, charging into battle, and they just don't care. Love that, as that's what orcs should be. It's just the one orc that cares about his family. Because all we see this episode is this one orc be upset that they're going to war. This one orc that was like, Adar, you promised these things. What are we doing? It's this one orc that brings up concerns when Adar does want to use the troll. Because he's like, oh, but the troll's going to kill us too. He's like, that's the way it is. As it should be. If a troll kills an orc, that's just an expectation. So it's just this one orc instead of all the orcs, which I thought was kind of funny. Because Amazon was really trying to push, like, the orc mentality is all about family now. But no. It's not the orc mentality. It's just that one specific orc. So I thought that change was just kind of funny. Galadriel escapes from her prison. Orc-like family. She escapes because she got the lockpick. She sees... This part was cool of seeing the orc culture, right? Adar's like saying goodbye to his children because they've died in war. This is okay. Orcs could have this kind of caring, right? Like they bring back their dead bodies, and yeah, sure, orcs could have friends. Like, I'm not saying they're not allowed to because they only care about war. So this like burning them and, you know, saying goodbye to them and their souls pass on into the darkness, return to darkness, he says. Like, that's all fine. Nothing wrong with that. And then as Galadriel's trying to escape, Arondir shows up. So they have a moment, and she's like, no, don't fight here. Go fight in the city. Your time for revenge will be later. Then we find out something really weird that I did not see coming or expected, nor should it ever be happening, but here we are. The dwarves come back to Durin, and they're like, Durin, we can't send the army, or we can't leave, because if you come back, you might not have a home to return to. You want to know why? Well, it's not because of a Balrog. It's because of King Durin. King Durin is now apparently going around slaughtering all the dwarves? Wait, what? King Durin's going around. He's super mad. He wants his mithril. And because the orcs are the dwarves are stopping him, he's going around just killing all of them by himself. So I guess this ring of power is giving him a lot of power, because the dwarves definitely outnumber King Durin. But nope, King Durin's just killing a bunch of dwarves. That's not how the rings work with the dwarves. The fun thing with the dwarves is that the dwarves are so stubborn that the corruption of Sauron cannot penetrate their will. that's just so fun to read about in the books. Dwarves are too stubborn to be corrupted. That's fun. Play with that. But nope, King Durn's been corrupted by the ring. He's lost his mind. He's going around killing everyone. Didn't expect that, but that's what's happening. And then he's apparently going to dig through a mine, and that's what's going to awaken the Balrog, which is going to be weird, but whatever. It is what it is. Adar keeps telling Celebrimbor to make the rings. If you make the rings, they'll give you peace. Yada, yada, yada. Celebrimbor then makes the bold decision and stupid decision because it's the wrong decision because there's better ways to do it. He's trapped in handcuffs and he's being forced to make the rings. First, he tries to... I don't know if he tried to destroy the rings and then realize that they can't melt as if they're made like the One Ring, I guess. That part wasn't really clear to me. But regardless, he puts them in a bag because he's going to escape with them so that they can destroy them later. But he's handcuffed. Now, this is a realistic thing. If you're handcuffed, if you break your thumb or dislocate it or whatever, however you go about doing that is totally up to you. But you can break your thumb and handcuffs will come off of you. It's kind of why handcuffs work, right? You try to pull off handcuffs and your thumb gets in the way. Maybe if you're super flexible, you can like pull the handcuffs off, but it's really the bones that get in the way. So if you break your thumb so that there's nothing, it has no resistance against the handcuffs. If you break it, you can pull the handcuffs off. So that's what I was immediately thinking, like, break your thumb, you'll be able to escape. The other option would be break the chain, which he tried breaking with the hammer, but it wasn't working. I would have tried a little bit harder, but that's fine. He then goes to like his, I don't know, I'll call it his ring press device. It's like, oh, okay, yes. Put the chain in there, crush the chain. That could work. No, let's not do that. We're going to go to the thumb. I'm like, okay, well, you could try breaking the chain again, but fine. Let's go right to your thumb. I'm like, well, all you need to do is break it, though, right? You just break it. You could, I guess this is easier than trying to smash it with a hammer. So, right, just press down on it, break your thumb, and then you can escape. You're fine. No, Celebrimbor decides to go all the way. Celebrimbor goes hard. He says, I'm going to chop off my thumb, then I can escape. You don't need to do that. Bold choice, unnecessary choice. You could have just broken your thumb. You didn't have to lose your thumb forever. But whatever. Celebrimbor decides to cut off his thumb so that he can escape. He cuts off his thumb. He goes outside, and he's captured by his guards again. His guards are like, "What are you doing? You're even hurting yourself now out here. You got to go back inside. You're too broken." But then Galadriel arrives to save the day, and she's like, "No. What he's saying is correct. Anatar Sauron, he's bad. He's manipulated you all. I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner. None of this would have happened if Galadriel just told everybody that Halbrand was Sauron day one, but nope, that couldn't happen. She had to keep it a secret for a while. So, of course, she feels bad. Then we have this interesting moment, and I see what they're trying to do with it, but at this point, I'm just really upset with the show, so I don't care about the efforts that they're trying to do. But Celebrimbor is trying to tell her that though all hope is lost, light is always the victory against evil and darkness. Whether you're outnumbered, whether you feel like there's no hope, whether or not you don't have the right weapons or tools, whatever it is, light will always overcome darkness. It's a great message. I like it. And it's probably going to be what triggers Galadriel to be one of the light and use a little bit more magical powers, I guess. I don't know. But at this point, I just don't care anymore. Because then Celebrimbor says, you take the rings and escape. I will stay here and delay as long as I can. And this is what this is just another problem that Amazon's created, all because they didn't follow the story that was written for them. So now Galadriel has the 9 rings of men. She's going to escape with them. What happens now? Why don't the elves destroy the rings then? They're going to find out, oh, we can't destroy them in fire. We can't melt them down. Well, what about the whole chasm that Kieran talked about in like season or episode 1 or 2, where he was going to take the elven rings and the depths, they were going to either be lost in the depths of the ocean or crushed by the weight of the water. I don't know. But just take the rings there. These are clearly evil rings, so just drop them in the ocean. Problem solved. No Nazgul. Men will never be corrupted. But nope, that's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen because we have to have Nazgul. So it's another problem that Amazon has created now that they didn't need to create. By solving one problem, they create another problem. And if they just followed the script that was written for them, it wouldn't be an issue. But here we are. So that happens. Galadriel leaves with the rings, while Celebrimbor and his guards go and deal with Sauron. Then we have the Boromir moment. So Elrond's plan on the battlefield is to destroy the war machine that's ripping apart the walls. Great idea. I stand behind that idea. Sign me up. That makes sense. And this one elf, I don't even know her name. If they've ever said her name, I never caught it, and I don't care about her character, but here she is. She's the elite elven archer, supposedly, according to Galadriel, I guess. She is going to shoot a fire arrow at the war machine, and it'll blow up, and it'll save the day. As this is happening, she gets shot with a bunch of arrows, basically has a Boromir moment where she's literally like peppered with arrows. I think she takes like 6 arrows or something. Boromir in the books took like 30 arrows. Boromir in the movies took 3. This elf takes 6. She then shoots the arrow and completes her mission, but then still dies in the process. But here's our knockoff Boromir moment. And this is what confused me so much. What does she blow up? Her arrow goes flying. It lands into like tar or oil or whatever. It explodes. This tar, I thought, was attached to the siege weapon. So there's this big, massive explosion. It kills orcs. Orcs go flying. And the whole point was to destroy the war machine, which I get. But then later, the war machine is still standing. So what blew up? What was the whole point of this? We had this whole moment of her sacrificing herself to destroy the war machine, but then it didn't even do anything. Was there 2 of them? I don't understand. It makes no sense, because then they send in the troll, and Family Orc Man's like, no, you can't do that. He'll kill our own people. It's just the way it is. Send in the troll. So that he sends in the troll, and then the troll shows up and does troll things of just walking on people and crushing people and using orcs as shields against arrows. Then he chucks his weapon for whatever reason at Arendir, and then he grabs the siege weaponry and then starts using it and ripping the walls apart. Gil-galad shows up, ties a grappling hook to his foot, and then they kill the troll later. But it's just... So the war machine blew up, but then we're just sending the troll in to use the war machine, so it didn't actually blow up, it just was on fire? I don't know, it just made no sense. And then we learn that Amazon wanted their own Sith Lords, because now Sauron is force-choking people as Celebrimbor and his guards show up to find Sauron in the ring forging room, and he's looking for the rings and he can't find them. Like, haha, you can't find them. I sent them away. Good luck finding them, idiot. Sauron starts force choking one guard. Other guards surround him. Sauron then uses the force to force their weapons out and face each other. Then basically twists his hands, and then all the elves stab each other. And yeah, there goes the elves. Because Sauron is now a Dark Lord of the Sith. Then it's now daytime, and we get another situation of how Amazon really hates showing the passage of time and could care less about the passage of time. So Elrond was prepared for the dwarves to show up at first light of the day, right? Because we got to have our Helm's Deep moment. Except we don't get our Helm's Deep moment because the dwarves don't arrive. However, the passage of time issue I have is the fact that way in the distance, on the hills of Eregion, in the east, there's a lone rider on a mountain who is the messenger that was sent to Moria to rally the dwarves or whatever. He arrives alone, so there's no dwarves. But he's far in the distance. He's a long ways away. However, the next second, he's magically in front of Elrond with arrows on his back, being like the dwarves didn't show up, and then he basically dies there. So in that 1 second, he made it, I don't know, like something that would probably take you like 30 minutes to an hour. It's just, I know you don't want to just sit there and wait, but like, you could have some sort of build up, right? You could show him, you could show the light and then show like a shadow go over the light. Like, the dwarves are coming, keep fighting, and then they keep fighting, but then you look back up and they're like, wait, where are the dwarves? And then the one elf shows up after you keep fighting, and then like the dwarves aren't here, they're not coming, and then he dies. Like, you can still do the same thing, but you have to like spread it out a bit just to show some sort of passage of time. I don't know. It's really weird. Oh, Arondir has magic arrows. I wanted to point that out. While he's fighting the troll, time makes no sense. While Arondir is fighting the troll, he has 5 arrows in his quiver. I counted them. He has 5 because I wanted to make a note of this. Legolas has a bunch of arrows in his quiver that do run out because we've seen it, and I mentioned that earlier. Arondir somehow keeps pulling arrows out of thin air because the arrows in his quiver never go below 5. So he's shooting arrows from somewhere, who knows where, but the arrows in his quiver never go down. Then, for whatever reason, he throws his bow away when he goes and fights the troll, which that makes no sense. An elf archer would never throw away their bow, but here we are. He throws his bow away. And then we're at basically the last bit of the fight where it's Gil-galad, it's Elrond, it's Arondir, and it's like, you know what, I might actually just count it here, but I think it's like 12 or like 15 elves. Hold on, I'm going to wait for the shot, and I'm actually going to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Some of these dead bodies may actually be alive ones. It's hard to tell. So we're looking between, 20 and 25 elves, with including Elrond, Gil-galad, and Arondir. And I don't know. I thought it was really funny because then immediately after that, then there's like two elves that immediately die. So now we're down to like under 20 or 20, well, say 20 to 22. And then some orcs die, and then 2 more elves die. I'm like, okay, well, now we're definitely under 20 here at this point. So it's just, I don't know if there's any elves that survive this, and I'm going to be able to count how many die. I'm going to call bullshit on their fight sequence. If you're going to make an effort to show there's only this many elves left, you should make an effort to show how each of those elves died, because there's not that many. As I said, there's like 20 to 25 elves. 3 of them being named characters. 2 of them aren't allowed to die because they can't kill Gil-galad and Elrond right now. They can kill Arondir, which kind of maybe happens. We don't know yet, technically. But yeah, if you're going to make an effort to show how little elves remain, then you better be aware that I'm going to be counting and watching when these elves die, because if there's magically all of a sudden 50 to 100 elves remaining, I'm going to call bullshit because you're not keeping track of your fight. And that's what makes a fight sequence good, is when you keep track of what's going on screen, and every soldier or stuntman has a story to tell, and you make an effort to show each death. Like that's how you make a good fight. Because when it's super easy to do that when you've reduced your number so drastically. So I don't know. I'm gonna make a mental note of how many there are, and then we'll see what happens at the end of this. But yeah. So then Arendir fights Adar, and apparently gets like stabbed in the chest and the stomach. So we don't actually know if he's dead or not, but it's that fake suspense. Could be that fake suspense, but I don't know. If they're gonna kill a character, Arendir's the only one that they can kill, because they can't kill Gil-galad, and they can't kill Elrond, and they can't kill Galadriel, so this is a way to kill a character. Now just make it look like you care. Next episode is the final, so we might not even see the elves again for like a year. That's true. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I had that thought too. I have a feeling that the next episode, because it's the finale, we may not even see the elven characters again. We may go back to the desert and have Gandalf, not Gandalf, fight Saruman, not Saruman. And the hobbits get overrun by the desert people, and Tom Bombadil come save the day. And then we'll go back to Numenor and see what goes on there. And then we'll see, like, Theo or Theon or whatever in Gondor, and we'll see his story. I don't know how much more of the elves we're going to see. I have a feeling that Amazon might do a little cliffhanger here, where we'll see, like, I don't know, maybe 2 more seconds of the fight, and then we'll get the conclusion to the rest of the story. But that's the end of the episode. Oh, right. Yeah, see? Actually, we'll probably get a Balrog tease, actually. That's a good point. I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, that's a good point. It might actually be a Balrog tease at the end, where we're going to see Durin slaughtering dwarves and then break his way into a mine, and then it'll end with the Balrog waking up a second time, being disturbed from his sleep again, and then wreaking havoc on the dwarves. But yeah, he'll wake up and roar and take 1 step forward, and then it'll cut. Because we're only allowed 2 seconds per season. Probably a lot of the Harfoot Stranger, Numenor, and maybe the dwarves to see what will happen. Yeah, that's exactly it. It was taking another nap, obviously. It was taking another nap. Then Disa woke him up when she did the screaming to find her little purple crystal orb thingy. So that pissed him off, so he roared back. And then he's like, okay, maybe I can go for my nap a 3rd time. So he takes his nap again, and then King Durin knocks on the door and wakes him up. I love the part where SpongeBob ate the pie. So yeah, that's Rings of Power. That was special. It was definitely special. So I'll end we're welcome to still talk about it, but that'll be the end of the review that I put on to YouTube after this. So yeah, for YouTube, let me know what you guys think. I know some of you have been really upset with what I've been saying about the show on YouTube, but you don't tell me why. There's been a couple of my reviews have just been review bombed, which I found quite entertaining. But none of you have told me why. So I'd be curious. If you really dislike what I'm saying so much, then leave a comment and let's talk about it. I've said you're welcome to talk about it and leave a comment and we can have actual discussions. But to just review bomb it and not say anything and hide behind your dislike button, I don't know. Let's leave an actual comment. But for those that have been joining in on the discussion, I do appreciate it. Because, yeah, you're allowed to like it. I just don't. Many of us don't. So we can have open discussions about it. That's fine. So, yeah, go ahead and leave your comments. Let me know what you think. And then I'll see you next week for the last episode.